The storm rolled over the hills of Kentucky like a living thing, rattling the tin roof of an abandoned barn that hadn't felt a heartbeat in 3 decades. Inside, 5 friends huddled around a flickering lantern, dust turning their breath into ghosts. The air smelled of rain, rust, and old secrets. Someone whispered, "It's ours now." Their laughter echoed through the emptiness, but beneath the sound, the floor groaned, a deep, reluctant sigh. In the corner, the youngest, Eddie, brushed his hand against a loose plank and felt something hollow beneath. "Guys," he murmured, voice trembling, "there's something buried here." Lightning flashed, white and violent, carving their faces in slices of fear and wonder. They pried the boards open, nails screaming as if protesting the intrusion. A small metal box emerged from the dark soil, dented, sealed with a strip of wax, long cracked by time. No one spoke. The storm outside seemed to hold its breath with them. Sarah reached first, her fingers trembling, tracing the faded engraving on the lid. "For the year 1950. "Wait," said Tom, his eyes narrowing. "This barn was abandoned in 1920. The words hung heavy, like smoke refusing to fade. How could a message from the past know their exact year? Eddie cracked the seal. Inside, a folded newspaper clipping, a photograph of the same barn, but behind the smiling faces, something blurred in the shadows, something that looked almost alive. Thunder boomed again, closer now, shaking the rafters. Sarah turned the photo over, and on the back a single line was written in shaky ink, "Don't stay after dark." The lantern flickered once, then twice, and went out. The storm passed by dawn, leaving the world washed in silver fog and the scent of wet hay clinging to their clothes. The 5 friends stood outside the barn, staring at the photo that shouldn't exist. Sarah tried to laugh it off, but her voice broke mid-sentence, the kind of break that never heals right. Tom smoked in silence, counting each drag as if it could measure sanity. Eddie, the youngest, couldn't stop staring at the date, 1920. He'd grown up hearing stories about that year, the influenza, the fires, the families who vanished, but none of those stories mentioned a warning. None said, "Don't stay after dark." They'd bought the barn with coins saved from factory shifts and poker nights, dreaming of turning it into a music hall, a place to breathe again after years of noise and smoke. The town of Mill Creek had been dying slow since the war ended. Work was scarce and hope came in rationed doses. That's what bound them, 5 souls chasing a ghost of something better. When they found the box, it felt like the world had finally noticed them. But gifts from the past always come with debts, and none of them yet knew the price. Later that morning, while sunlight filtered through holes in the roof, Sarah unfolded the newspaper clipping. It was dated August 3rd, 1920. The headline read, "Local family missing after storm." Below it, a photograph, the same barn, same silhouette of trees, same air heavy with rain. But the faces in that picture weren't strangers. They looked almost like them, younger, dressed in older clothes but with the same eyes. The resemblance was impossible, yet it was there, printed in fading ink. Tom refused to believe it. He tore the photo in half, tossed it into the dirt, and walked away. But the wind lifted one piece, carrying it back to Sarah's boots. On its edge, a smudge of red ink formed words too faint to be random. "We tried to leave." She didn't show the others. Some truths are safer in silence, at least until nightfall comes again. That evening, the fog returned thicker, swallowing the fields whole. Eddie lit the lantern, promising they'd clean the place by dawn. His voice was steady, but his hands shook just enough for Sarah to notice. Outside, something metallic clanged once. Maybe a loose gate, maybe not. In the distance, the church bell rang 5 times, though the clock tower had been broken for years. They froze, listening to the echo fade into the mist, not realizing yet that the warning on the photo wasn't just about darkness, it was about them. By the second night, the barn no longer felt like theirs. The air inside grew colder, though the fire pit outside still burned. Sarah woke first, startled by the sound of humming, low, rhythmic, like someone tuning an old radio through static. When she turned, Eddie wasn't in his sleeping bag. The lantern flickered near the far stall where the floorboard had been torn open. She followed the sound, barefoot on dust and splinters, her breath clouding in the chill. The humming stopped. In its place came a whisper, her own name spoken by a voice that wasn't familiar but somehow knew her. Eddie crouched over the hole, the metal box beside him. He'd unfolded the newspaper completely, and beneath it lay something else they hadn't seen before. A strip of fabric, yellowed and brittle, embroidered with a date, August 4th, 1920. The same day after the family disappeared. His fingers trembled as he showed it to her. "There's more under here," he said. Beneath the loose earth was a second container, smaller, made of glass, sealed with black wax. Inside, half dissolved by time, was a silver locket and a rolled scrap of paper that seemed to move with the draft. Sarah reached for it, and the humming returned. The others woke to her scream. The locket had burst open on its own, revealing two miniature portraits. One was of a woman wearing a pendant identical to Sarah's own necklace, a family heirloom she'd inherited without history. The other portrait showed a child with Eddie's eyes, clear and frightened. No one spoke for a long time. Outside, dawn was bleeding pale over the hills, but the barn remained dark, as if light itself refused entry. Tom muttered that they should leave it buried, but curiosity is a kind of hunger that never starves quietly. By midday, despite every instinct screaming otherwise, they dug deeper. The paper inside the glass case unfolded like skin, revealing faded lines of a map, their own farm, marked with a circle behind the well. At the bottom, written in that same shaky ink, "Second warning." Eddie laughed nervously, pretending it was a prank, but Sarah knew better. The handwriting matched the one on the photo. Same uneven curves, same trembling edges. The storm clouds began gathering again above Mill Creek, heavy and deliberate. Whatever had left those warnings had waited 30 years to be found. The circle on the map led them behind the well, to a patch of earth untouched by decades. It was Sarah who noticed the ground was softer there, as if something beneath still breathed. They dug with bare hands, the soil damp and smelling of copper. An hour later, Tom's shovel struck metal, a large door lying flat under the dirt. Its surface bore the same engraving as the E box for the year 1950. The repetition made Sarah's stomach twist. "Who would bury a door?" Eddie whispered. The wind answered with a low moan that wasn't entirely natural. When Tom pulled the handle, cold air rushed up, dry and sweet, like long-sealed cellars. A staircase descended into darkness. Lanterns lit. They followed the steps. The deeper they went, the thicker the air became, filled with the faint scent of lavender and decay. Halfway down, the flame flickered blue, and their shadows stretched unnaturally long across the stone. At the bottom lay a room no larger than a bedroom, lined with shelves of glass jars. Each jar held something suspended in murky liquid, locks of hair, old buttons, faded ribbons, and in the center, a single wooden chair facing the wall. Carved into the backrest were 5 names. Theirs. Sarah reached out, tracing her own, still damp as if freshly carved. She jerked her hand back, heart pounding like footsteps. Then the sound came. Not echo, not wind. Breathing, slow, deliberate, behind the wall. Tom swung his lantern toward it. The bricks trembled once, and a handprint appeared on the surface, pressed from the other side. The outline was small, child-sized, but the fingers were too long, too thin. The air turned colder. Sarah whispered, "It's them, the family." Eddie shook his head, voice breaking. "No, it's waiting for us." The lantern light caught movement, something glistening between the bricks, like tar or blood. Then, voice drifted through the crack, hollow and patient. "You came late." Every instinct screamed to run, yet none of them moved, because beneath the fear, another truth rooted itself. Whatever had been trapped here knew their names before they were born. Above, the storm began again, rolling over Mill Creek like an old memory awakening. The door at the top slammed shut on its own. The latch clicked. They were no longer the ones exploring the past. The past was exploring them. The 5 of them emerged from the cellar just before dawn, pale and shaking, their lanterns burned to stubs. None of them spoke until the barn's roofline glowed pink with the rising sun. Sarah's hands were still cold. The carved names hadn't faded from her skin. "We should tell someone," she said. But Tom snapped, "Tell them what? That the dead know our birthdays?" He kicked the dirt until his boot struck the old door again. It rang hollow, like a bell without faith. Eddie stood apart, staring toward the horizon, where fog swallowed the hills. He whispered that the voice said, "You came late." Not too late. The difference haunted him. By midday, they gathered in town, searching records at the library. Mill Creek's archives were brittle and yellow, smelling of mildew and lost time. Sarah traced the microfilm reels with trembling fingers until she found it. An article dated August 5th, 1920. Bodies of local family found under barn. No names were listed. Only the phrase, suspected of unholy rites. The photograph showed a man with eyes like Tom's, a woman resembling Sarah, and 3 children blurred by motion. It wasn't just resemblance anymore, it was reflection. Tom slammed the book shut, but the sound didn't echo. The air itself seemed to absorb it. Eddie discovered another entry, handwritten in the margins. The farm was purchased again 30 years later. History repeats. No signature, just a red thumbprint at the bottom, still bright as if written yesterday. The librarian, an elderly woman with cataract eyes, stared at them over her glasses and whispered, "That place keeps time wrong, always has." They left without speaking, but Sarah felt her pulse sinking with something deeper, a rhythm that didn't belong to her. That evening, as the sun bled over the fields, they noticed a new mark on the barn door. 5 small handprints in dust, perfectly aligned, fingers pointing inward. None of them had touched it. When they tried to wipe it away, the prints remained, pressed into the wood itself. The map from the capsule began to darken around its edges, ink bleeding like a wound reopening. Beneath the circle, a new word had appeared in faded grey: exchange. Night returned, heavy, thick with electricity. They slept in shifts, the barn creaking with unseen movement. Around 3 in the morning, Sarah woke to the sound of whispering, 5 voices overlapping, counting backward from 10. At 0, the door began to open by itself. The door didn't swing open all, the way only wide enough for wind to slip through, cold and wet, carrying the smell of smoke that shouldn't exist. Sarah held the lantern up, its flame trembling like a frightened eye. On the floor, letters appeared one by one, traced in drifting dust. 6 nights. Then they scattered as if breathed away. Tom swore under his breath and grabbed the map again, but the paper had begun to decay at its center, revealing a hidden layer beneath. Written in the same red ink, after the 6th night, the living stay. No one moved for a full minute. Somewhere deep in the barn, a soft ticking started, steady and slow, like a clock buried in the walls. By morning, they convinced themselves it was exhaustion. People don't wake ancient warnings, not in real life. Still, the ticking never stopped. It followed them into town, faint but constant, echoing through the windows of the diner where they argued over coffee gone cold. Sarah wanted to leave. Tom refused. The barn was their only investment, their future. Eddie watched the rain slide down the glass, muttering that maybe the future wasn't supposed to come cheap. The waitress leaned in and asked softly, "You from the old ransom place?" They nodded. Her smile vanished. "My granddaddy helped dig those bodies out. You'd best finish whatever you started before the 6th bell." She didn't explain what she meant. She just crossed herself and walked away. That night, they returned to find new carvings on the barn's beams, lines forming a calendar, 5 marks already scratched deep. The air vibrated faintly, a heartbeat through the wood. Sarah counted the marks, 1 for each of them. Eddie asked what happens when all 6 are drawn. The barn answered with a creak that sounded too much like laughter. The ticking grew louder as the sky darkened. They searched every wall, every crate, every corner, but couldn't find the source. Finally, beneath the floor where they'd uncovered the capsule, Tom's shovel hit something metallic again. This time it wasn't a box, it was a clock, its hands frozen at midnight yet still beating beneath the glass. Sarah touched it, and for a second, everything stopped. Wind, sound, even breath. Then slowly, the second hand moved backward. When it reached 12 again, a whisper filled the barn, clear and sharp. Night 1. By dawn, the clock had stopped again, its second hand buried between ticks. Sarah swore it had moved through the night, yet no one believed her until Eddie found the number. 2 carved into the barn door. Beneath it, a fresh layer of soil covered footprints. Small, bare, leading from the well to the steps. The rain hadn't erased them. Tom tried to fill the prints with gravel, but the stones kept sinking, as though the ground swallowed them whole. The air smelled faintly of iron, and when Sarah knelt, she saw her reflection in a puddle, only it wasn't her face that blinked back. They drove to the preacher's house on the edge of town, seeking some rational light. The old man listened in silence, eyes clouded by more than age. "That barn was consecrated once," he said, voice brittle as parchment. "Then something unconsecrated it. You can't own ground that refuses its name." He handed Sarah a small vial of blessed oil and warned, "Mark your doors before the 6th night, and whatever you do, if the bell rings before sunrise, don't answer it." They left uneasy, but Tom pocketed the vial anyway. On the drive back, Static hissed through the radio. Not music, not voices, just rhythm. Ticking, counting. That evening, they tried to board the cellar shut. The hammer blows echoed longer than they should have, like someone else was matching them from below. Eddie's flashlight caught a word scratched newly into the floorboards. Wait! He stepped back so fast the beam shattered against the wall, plunging them into darkness. The barn exhaled dust, and the smell of lavender filled the air again, sweet and wrong. Tom lit a match. Its light barely reached there. Faces, as if something between them and the flame was breathing. Suddenly the clock started on its own. The hands spun faster than sight, the sound now deafening. Sarah screamed for it to stop, but when Tom smashed it with the hammer, the ticking didn't die. It multiplied, hundreds of faint beats rising from the walls, from the roof, from beneath their feet. The boards trembled, the barn pulsed, and then, from somewhere deep inside the foundation, a bell rang once, clear and deliberate. The same pitch the preacher had warned them about. Eddie ran to the door, yanking it open, desperate to escape the sound. But outside wasn't night or dawn anymore. The fields glowed with a dim, colorless light. No stars, no moon, just endless fog. Their car was gone. So was the road. Behind them, the bell rang a second time. They stood frozen in that colorless fog, the barn behind them breathing like a living lung. Sarah's voice trembled. "We're not outside." Her words didn't echo. Sound fell flat, absorbed by air too thick to be real. Tom pressed forward, flashlight cutting through the mist until the beam hit something invisible, a surface that shimmered like glass. When he touched it, his palm came away bleeding, thin red lines spelling letters he couldn't read. Eddie knelt beside him and whispered, "We didn't leave the barn. It left us." The fog began to pulse with faint lights, silhouettes moving in slow motion, flickering in and out as if caught between seconds. Back inside, the clock had reset. The hands pointed to 12 again, but this time the dial bore no numbers, only names, theirs, etched where the hours should be. Sarah's name glowed faintly, marking the first position. She pressed her fingers over it, and for a heartbeat she saw herself standing in the old newspaper photo, smiling in sepia tones. She tore her hand away, shaking. "It's rewriting us," she said. The ticking grew louder, but now it came from everywhere, even their own chests. The countdown wasn't on the clock anymore, it was inside them. Tom tried to pray, but the words came out backward. A sudden gust blew the barn doors wide. The fog spilled in, carrying the echo of distant voices, people calling names that didn't belong to any of them. Then silence fell like a held breath. Sarah turned to the camera Eddie had left on the table. The screen flickered, showing their group from behind, filmed from an impossible angle. Someone else inside the barn. "Who's recording us?" She whispered. "Aproveita e conta de onde você está ouvindo, cidade e país. E deixa o seu gostei para essa história continuar chegando a mais gente." The camera's battery light blinked red, though it hadn't been turned on all day. The lens zoomed slightly, adjusting its focus on Sarah's face as if obeying an unseen hand. On the playback, a whisper accompanied the static. "Halfway there." The timestamp on the footage read exactly 6 minutes past midnight. Every night before had stopped at 5. Time was no longer running forward. It was closing in. They sat together in the barn's center, surrounded by tools and broken boards, the lantern flame barely alive. Eddie traced the carvings on the wall again. One more line had appeared, marking the 4th night, though they had only counted 3. Sarah realized with a chill that the barn wasn't waiting for them to survive the 6th. It was counting differently. Somewhere above, the bell began to toll again, softer now, almost gentle. But it wasn't a warning this time. It was an invitation. By the next dusk, the fog had turned to rain again, but the droplets never touched the ground. They hung mid-air, trembling like glass beads, refracting fragments of light that shouldn't exist. Sarah screamed for them to leave, but Tom refused, his voice shaking with something between rage and denial. "If this place wants us, it can't have us," he shouted, kicking open the door. The fog beyond shimmered once and pulled back like a curtain, revealing an empty road. They ran. The fields looked endless, yet every step took them back to the barn. The building waited, doors wide, its shadow stretching farther than light should allow. They locked themselves inside, panic breathing through every heartbeat. Eddie slammed boards against windows, while Sarah poured the preacher's oil across the doorframe. The scent filled the air, bitter and sharp, mixing with the smell of wet wood. For a moment, the ticking slowed, like the barn was listening. Then something answered, a pounding from beneath the floor, rhythmic, demanding. Sarah dropped the vial. It shattered, oil spreading like a map. From the cracks in the wood, tiny streams of black liquid seeped upward, twisting into shapes of hands reaching toward the light. Tom grabbed the hammer, shouting, "We break the foundation. Maybe it ends it." But when the metal hit the boards, sparks flew without sound, and for an instant the walls turned transparent. They saw another barn, behind theirs, identical but older, with 5 figures trapped inside, mirroring their movements, screaming silently. The illusion vanished, leaving scorch marks shaped like faces on the wall. Eddie began to cry, whispering, "It's us. It's always been us." They tried the door again, but it refused to open. The clock on the table ticked once, then spat out a sliver of paper from its cracked glass. Tom picked it up with trembling fingers. Written in red, "5th night begins." No one had slept. No. One had seen a sunrise. The calendar of carvings had added another mark on its own. Sarah collapsed to her knees, whispering a prayer to a god that might not hear through centuries of silence. Outside, lightning split the sky in absolute white. For a single second they saw silhouettes, 5 figures standing at the edge of the fog, staring back. When the darkness returned, the figures were gone, but the echo of footsteps began descending the cellar stairs. The footsteps on the cellar stairs didn't echo like human ones. They slid, dragging softly, as if each step was a memory being pulled back into shape. Sarah grabbed the lantern, but the flame dimmed the closer she came to the opening. Tom whispered, "Whatever it is, it's tied to us. Maybe if we end the connection—" He never finished. The boards beneath his feet swelled upward, throwing him to the ground. From the cracks rose a faint blue light, like moonlight drowned underwater. Eddie shouted his name, but Tom only stared. Eyes, wide pupils reflecting something that wasn't there, or wasn't supposed to be. When they dragged him back, his pulse still beat, but he didn't speak. His lips moved, forming words none of them recognized. Sarah leaned close enough to hear the rhythm. It matched the clock's ticking. She realized with horror he was counting backwards. "Tom, stop!" she cried, shaking him. His voice broke free for a second, whispering, "It's already written." Then silence. The clock hands turned to 5. The E4 cellar door opened by itself. They descended together this time, lanterns trembling in unison. The room below had changed. The jars were shattered, the chair overturned. In its place stood a mirror, full length, framed in tarnished silver, but the reflection wasn't theirs. It showed the family from 1920 standing inside the barn above, staring down as if through water. The woman in the mirror lifted her hand. Sarah did the same, and the glass rippled like liquid. Their fingertips met. Hair crossed time. The air hissed, then the mirror cracked, bleeding dust that smelled like roses and rot. Behind the mirror, they found a second clock, larger, carved into the wall. Its face bore no hands at all, just a circular engraving that glowed faintly red. Around it, carved in old-style lettering, "When the 6th toll sounds, names become echoes." Eddie backed away, muttering, "We're the echoes." Sarah touched the carving, and for the first time, the barn itself groaned, deep and pained. Boards warped, nails squealed. The roof trembled like lungs exhaling after years of holding breath. Tom suddenly gasped, sitting upright. His eyes cleared for one heartbeat, and he said, "It's not the barn, it's the hour." Then every clock, every ticking thing, even their hearts, stopped at once. The silence was so complete it felt solid, and from that stillness came a sound older than language, the slow chime of the 6th bell beginning to rise. The first toll hadn't yet faded when Sarah grabbed the broken clock from the floor. "It's not counting time, it's trapping it," she said. Eddie's hands trembled as he lit a fresh lantern, its glow slicing through dust like dawn through smoke. Tom, still pale, muttered that the barn's foundation matched the layout of a sundial, every beam a spoke pointing to a single center. "That's where it began," he whispered. They agreed on a single plan: find the heart of the hour before the 6th bell ended, destroy it, even if it meant sealing themselves inside. Sarah's voice steadied. "We started this together. We end it together." They armed themselves with tools, hammers, oil, rope, symbols of work turned into weapons. Eddie traced the red markings across the floor, noticing how each curve led toward the mirror's remains. Beneath it, carved into the stone, A small hollow glowed faintly. Inside rested the silver locket from before, now pulsing with soft light. Sarah reached for it, feeling the metal burn her palm. The pain didn't blister. Instead, it hummed, a vibration matching the unseen clock. "It's a key," she said. "But to what?" The ticking above their heads answered, resuming faster than before. They dug around the hollow until stone gave way to clay. Underneath lay a wooden chest, older than the barn itself. Tom pried it open with the hammer, revealing a book wrapped in cloth and bound with wax. The cover bore a symbol, the same spiral that marked every clue. Inside, words were written in looping script. 2. Stop the hour. Give back what was borrowed. The next line was missing, torn away. Sarah turned the pages, each one blank after the first. Only the final sheet carried words in fresh ink. 5 must stand. 1 must remain. The 5th bell began to echo outside, slower this time, stretching each note until the barn quivered with sound. Sarah met their eyes, her expression caught between terror and acceptance. "It's a choice," she whispered. "One of us has to stay when it stops." Silence followed, thick and absolute. The rain outside turned to ash before hitting the ground. They could taste metal in the air, the taste of endings. Eddie spoke first. "We can beat it. There's always another way." But even as he said it, the 6th mark appeared on the wall by itself. No hand, no sound, just existence. The decision wasn't coming. It had already been made. The 6th bell began to draw breath, and the floor beneath them started to open. The barn split with a sound like thunder trapped beneath stone. The floorboards cracked apart, revealing a pit of faint light spiraling downward, a perfect circle spinning like the face of a clock. Sarah clutched the glowing locket, its pulse now matching the 6th bell's rhythm. "It wants one of us," she said, "one to replace what was lost." Tom shouted over the noise, "Then we burn it. All of it." He hurled the lantern into the opening. Fire blossomed, golden and furious, but the flames curved inward, swallowed whole by the spiral. The heat came, back colder, wrapping around them like breath. From the pit rose figures, translucent, shifting through forms that mirrored their own faces. The family from 1920 stood among them, eyes empty, mouths whispering words too old to exist. The woman pointed toward Sarah, then toward the locket, then toward the clock etched into the wall. The message was clear: close the loop, or it consumes both centuries. Eddie screamed, "Then take me!" and stepped forward. The ground rippled beneath his feet, but Sarah pulled him back, tears streaking through soot. "If one stays, the others live." It said 5 must stand. Tom stared at her, realization dawning too late. It never said 5 leave. The 6th bell struck once more, slow and final. Every shadow froze mid-motion. The reflection of the barn shimmered into view again, their doubles behind the glass, repeating every movement half a second late. Sarah held the locket high, and the mirrored Sarah did the same. "It's you," she whispered. To her reflection, "You're the one who stayed last time." The mirrored version nodded, tears falling upward. Cracks spread across the invisible barrier, spilling dust that glittered like stars. The fire roared to life again, climbing the walls, but it burned backward, devouring smoke instead of wood. Time stuttered, minutes folded. Eddie shouted something, but the sound broke into echoes that overlapped, repeating the same words in reverse. Sarah felt the locket grow heavier until she could barely hold it. "It's the anchor," she realized. "If it stays, the hour resets." Tom lunged to snatch it away, but the air thickened, the barn itself resisting. Their movements slowed as if trapped in syrup, every heartbeat stretching into eternity. The 6th bell's final toll began, vibrating through bone and wood alike. Sarah looked at each of them, Eddie, Tom, the twins behind the glass, and smiled through tears. "We already made it this far," she whispered. "Now someone has to keep the—" Ductor closed. She stepped into the spiral's light, the locket blazing white. The air shattered around her, and for one perfect second, all ticking stopped. Then the barn inhaled once, and the world blinked. When the light cleared, the pit was gone. Only the smell of lavender remained. 4 figures lay on the floor, gasping in the sudden quiet. The clock on the wall had vanished, leaving behind a single phrase burned into the wood. "The hour has been paid." But Sarah was no longer there.